isn't asking a question a bit like opening a book? As with a book, a question can transport you into new worlds. It can get your imagination going, to make you discover new laws of physics. It can fly you to the moon, make your dreams come true, or get your heart broken. And show how to dismantle an atomic bomb.
Oops. Okay, I wonder what hot dogs are made of.
It can change your life forever. It can even topple governments. It guides you into the minds of others. Makes you feel alive. It can even change the world, if you let it. Or it can just be this, a small, seemingly silly question. You cannot open a book without getting something in return. Some of us prefer skipping the questions altogether and going straight to the answers. They're quite soothing, really. You don't have to think as much. Sometimes it doesn't even matter if it's the right answer to any question, or that it gets us nowhere. That, however, is one big question. It is important to investigate, to examine every detail in wonder. We're not here to do things by the book. Ask around. Please do. A question is like a journey. A quest. Nothing important will ever happen as long as you don't dare to ask. Free. Open. Question everything.
The founder and executive chair of EAT, Dr. Gunhild Stordalen.
Within this great building, food is usually addressed as part of a problem. Whether it's child development, malnutrition and NCDs, climate change and environmental issues, or poverty and inequality. Because yes, there are hardly any parts of Agenda 2030 where food is currently not a challenge. But that also makes food a huge opportunity to tackle and even prevent these challenges. Obviously, I'm a bit too old to believe in superheroes. But I do believe that food has got superpowers. But to unlock these superpowers, food can't simply be addressed in bits and pieces or as part of something else. We need to see the big picture. Because the power of food is all about connections. First of all, food connects our health to the health of the planet. 30 years ago, the term sustainable development was introduced by the Brundtland Commission. And the Commission stressed that human health and development and the environment must be seen as inseparable. The links between people and planets are obviously everywhere. But nowhere are these connections more obvious and the synergies more numerous than on our plates and across the food system. And today we see that food is linked to basically all the Sustainable Development Goals, and thereby actually connects them. But food also connects these global goals to our personal everyday actions. All over, we see that decision makers really struggle to find bottom-up support for what seems long-term or often abstract. But food is tangible, it's applicable and empowering, and can allow people to make a positive difference literally every time they sit down to eat. So if everyone is given the opportunity to make better choices, food suddenly becomes an extremely powerful tool for change. Last but not least, food connects stakeholders across borders, sectors, and disciplines. Some say that out of all the SDGs, number 17, partnerships for the goals, collaboration, might indeed be the most critical, but perhaps also the hardest. But food has the power to gather all actors to the table around a unifying goal of healthy people on a healthy planet. Until now, we haven't been able to truly harness these connective powers of food. We have had no shared vision of what that overarching goal actually looks like. And we have had no official arenas for stakeholders to come together. So 6 years ago, we created EAT to gather key actors and to get things started. And now, finally, we have a clear scientific direction for how food can become a win-win for both people and planets by 2050. For the 3 past years, the EAT-Lancet Commission, consisting of 37 world-leading scientists from 16 different countries, have been working to assess all the best available evidence. And this EAT-Lancet Commission is the first ever effort to set global scientific targets for how to feed the world a healthy diet within safe environmental limits. The conclusions are dramatic, but most of all optimistic. We will never be able to achieve the SDGs nor the Paris Agreement unless we get it right on food. On the other hand, getting it right on food might just be our greatest opportunity to save millions of lives and improve many more, and at the same time securing our common future. But as we all know, there is no such thing as a silver bullet. This will require radical shifts in what we eat, how it's produced, and how we make sure that nothing gets wasted. So no wonder why this report has already triggered massive debates worldwide. But that's great. It's great and it's necessary, because we need more dialogue to build scientific consensus and global commitments. But as the Commission also states clearly, we know more than enough to act. We know more than enough to change policies and business models. More than enough to start adapting this framework to local conditions and different food cultures. And we know more than enough to start bringing solutions to every farm, every factory, every kitchen, and literally change to every plate. We also know more than enough to interact. Obviously, no single technology or entity will be able to fix this alone. It will require unprecedented collaboration at all levels, involving all actors. So is that really possible? Do we believe it? Well, the Commission says yes. Yes, but only if we employ the superpower of food itself, connecting all the dots and connecting people. But just look around you. In this room, look around you. You all come from different countries, with different roles and with different interests. But you all came together for food. The UN, with all its member states and agencies, obviously have a critical role to play in this great food transformation ahead. And you have the power to set the agenda and create the arenas to make sure that food becomes a driving force for progress, for people, planet, and prosperity for all. Perhaps the best 3-for-1 deal the world has ever seen. So do you think that sounds too good to be true? Well, that's why we brought the scientists here today to show you. So I could not be more proud to introduce co-chair Professor Walter Willett from Harvard School of Public Health to present the key findings of the EAT-Lancet Landmark Report on Food, Planet, Health. So please give a big hand to Walter Willett.
Yeah, thank you, Gunhild, and thank everybody for joining us today to talk about this report. As was mentioned, this was a 3-year project, and I'm asked to boil it down to 18 minutes. So here we go. If I could have the first slide, please. Great. Okay, this is our challenge here, and I have to twist my head a little bit. The problem is daunting, and I'll describe that a bit. But if we don't solve this problem or get close to solving this problem, it will mean that the future for our children is indeed not a pretty one. If we look at this from an ecological side, we are very much off track in terms of the food we're producing, the health impact, and the impact of producing this food on the environment. Up here, just looking at the changes over time in obesity and overweight, I think everyone here is aware that it's been a steady increase, and that's not slowing down at all. We've made some progress on undernutrition, but at the same time, we're really continuing to degrade the natural resources that support production of food around the world. We can look at that as emissions from agriculture, pesticide use, land use, many other indicators document that our environment is suffering from the way we produce our food, even for the number of people that are living on our planet today. We're not bending the curves. Again, looking a little more deeply at the health side of food and the well-being of humans, we have about 2 billion people on the planet who are currently overweight or obese, and that number is steadily increasing in almost every country. We have about 1 million children who are still, 1 million people, mostly children, who are still undernourished in terms of adequate food intake. And for most of the rest of the world, the quality of diet is far from what it should be for producing optimal health and well-being. This is what the situation looks like on the ground. This is actually from our family farm in Michigan in the Midwest of the United States. Like most of the Midwest, this has been turned into a vast monoculture of usually corn and soy. It was once upon a time a diverse, not too long ago actually, a very biodiverse place that produced food from both plants and animals. But this is what it looks like today. Obviously, huge loss of biodiversity. And what we do with this food produced here in the United States is rather amazing. of this vast field of corn, about 45% is fed to animals, about 35% goes to fueling automobiles and trucks as ethanol, about 15% is used for manufacturing, which mainly means production of high fructose corn syrup, and only about 10% is actually eaten by humans. So at the same time, we're really degrading the environment. We're also degrading the well-being of humans with the diet that we're producing. So we have a huge challenge before us, and this is what the Lancet Commission undertook to deal with. The goal being to achieve healthy planetary diets for nearly 10 billion people by 2050, and that's what the UN projections are in terms of the world's population by 2050. And it's challenging because we are way far off track at this time, even with the number of people that currently inhabit the planet. So this is a really daunting task. How do we go about dealing with it? We basically went through 4 steps. The first being to define a healthy reference diet. Secondly, to define planetary boundaries. And then we applied a global food system modeling framework to look at various combinations of changes in our food and also changes in the way we produce food and the amount of waste that's involved in production and consumption. And then we looked at strategies to achieve these changes. So this is a quick overview of these 4 steps. First of all, again, defining a healthy diet. And that's, again, a challenging task. There are now literally many thousands of papers that have looked at various aspects of diet and health, and we used all available information from different kinds of studies, randomized controlled feeding studies with cardiovascular risk factors as the outcomes, large observational cohort studies with long follow-up, many of them now going several decades, involving many hundreds of thousands of people, and then randomized trials of dietary patterns with cardiovascular risk factors and disease outcomes. So we weren't relying on any specific study or even type of study. We wanted to look at all available evidence. When we put all this together, this is what we came up with. These are the dietary targets for major food groups. I won't go through all of the numbers here, but the numbers for fruits and vegetables and grains are not very different than most people would expect, but we do emphasize whole grains. We looked at particular details of protein sources because they make a big difference both for health and planetary well-being. For beef, pork, and lamb, we came up with about 14 grams per day, about double that for poultry, modest amounts of eggs, fish, and then substantial amounts of legumes and nuts. And then we will be adding fats, and it's important that they be healthy fats that are sustainably produced, and a little bit of sugar. That's about half the current WHO recommendations. This is what those dietary targets look like graphically. About half the plate by volume would be fruits and vegetables. And then we do have a fair amount of calories coming from whole grains. This half of the plate is broken down by caloric intake, modest amounts of dairy foods, other animal source protein foods, mostly plant source bases of protein, but again, this is an omnivore diet. It's a big umbrella. It could be, versions of this could be a vegetarian or vegan diet, but our targets are omnivore, and then healthy plant oils and a little sliver of sugar there. This is what it would look like in terms of a day's food, and again, it's quite diverse, well-balanced. We've done nutritional analyses of this. Again, modest amounts of animal source proteins there, but nuts, legumes, lots of fruits, vegetables, and whole grains. Importantly, these dietary targets are consistent with eating foods and cultural eating traditions from all around the world. The best studied has been the Mediterranean diet, and this fits very well with the traditional Mediterranean diet, but it's also adaptable to virtually any part of the world, but there are a few exceptions in places where the climates are very harsh. But the good thing is that this is adaptable, and many cultures have traditional diets that are already very consistent with the targets that we've described. We've also analyzed what this would mean compared to current intakes of these food groups around the world. Here, this vertical line is the 100% of the target numbers. And you can see here for red meat, we're way overshooting the target numbers on average, but these different bars represent different regions of the world, and you can see there's a lot of variability. Some regions are a little bit lower than the target, some are at about the target numbers, while North America and Northern Europe is in quite excess for the amounts of red meat that are consumed. But very importantly, most of the very healthful aspects of diet fall quite short of the targets, including fish, vegetables, fruit, legumes, whole grains, and nuts. So the benefits of shifting toward this target are not just reducing unnecessary and excessive amounts of some food groups, but increasing health-promoting aspects of the diet as well. We also conducted analyses to look at the potential impact on mortality rates around the world. And we used 3 separate statistical approaches. I won't go into the details, but basically they all came out to pretty similar answers, that we could prevent about 11 million premature deaths each year around the world. These are adult deaths. There would be additional childhood deaths that could be prevented. And this amounts to about 20 to 25% of the deaths that occur every year. So there's huge, in fact, quite almost immediate health impacts that would be beneficial of adopting this diet. Then we looked at whether this diet or variations of it could fit within the planetary boundaries. Unfortunately, our colleagues in the earth sciences have defined planetary boundaries. We used 6 very important planetary boundaries, including climate change, land use, freshwater use, nitrogen and phosphorus cycling, and biodiversity loss. I won't go into the numbers here except just to mention, and I'm not used to these numbers, but 5 gigatons of CO2 equivalents per year has been defined as a planetary boundary consistent with the allocation of greenhouse gases by the IPCC. Very importantly, this is essentially the IPCC projection showing what we need to do to stay within 2 degrees centigrade of climate change by the end of the century. And it means by 2050 almost eliminating fossil fuel consumption. And we have made that assumption in calculating the environmental impacts of this diet. This is intertwined with the other sustainable development goals and the IPCC goals for control of climate change. But that report acknowledged that even with elimination of fossil fuels, agriculture will still almost necessarily have some greenhouse gas emissions from food production. And these numbers are for methane and nitrous oxide from food production. But if those are allowed to increase, rather than keeping them within these limits, we won't stay within the limits for controlling climate change. So we then conducted analyses looking at how this food would stay within the planetary boundaries. And we looked at various actions, a dietary shift to the diet we've just described, reducing waste and food loss, improving production practices, and a more ambitious level of improving production practices. And here again, we borrowed on another area of science, which has used many studies from around the world to look at the environmental footprints of different types of food production. And the differences are striking. This is looking at, in green here, at greenhouse gas production, and by far the biggest numbers are for red meat. Dairy products come next, but fish, and there's a lot of variation depending on how we produce the fish. Pork and chicken are moderate in terms of greenhouse gas production, but down at this end, the foods that actually are the healthiest, nuts, soybeans, legumes, vegetables, fruits, and cereals actually have very low footprints in terms of greenhouse gas production. So we use those numbers then to calculate how much, say, total greenhouse gas production would be developed by consuming, if the world adopted different dietary scenarios, including the reference diet that I described. Again, I won't go through all these numbers. These are just a number of the scenarios that we examined. This is the business as usual projection to 2050. The limit for greenhouse gas productions is about, again, 5 gigatons per year. If we continue on the path down which we're proceeding now, that means about doubling greenhouse gas production by 2050. But by adopting this, just by shifting to this diet that we've described, which will prevent millions of premature deaths, we cut greenhouse gas emissions in half, a really big impact. But that still doesn't leave us meeting the planetary boundaries for cropland use, water use, and these other planetary boundaries. And so therefore we looked at additional scenarios of cutting waste, improving agricultural production, mainly improving yields. And if we do everything right, we can get to a scenario that leaves us within the boundaries for greenhouse gas production and also these other criteria for the planetary boundaries. So there is a win solution here. How do we get there? We can only briefly touch on that here, but I'll just run through 5 strategies that were identified, very big umbrella strategies. First of all, that's seeking international and national commitments to shift toward healthy diets, and of course that can't be done without a public awareness and public support. So there's a huge effort that needs to go into that. And we need to reorient agriculture priorities from producing high quantities of food to producing healthy food. And a lot of agricultural priorities have been just on yields, and that's in general what FAO has been pushing without emphasizing the quality of the diet in the same way. So the green here looks at changes in food production on a global basis from where they are today. The orange bars here are the business as usual scenarios. Basically, if we would adopt this eating pattern, we would not need to increase grain production because we'd be feeding less of that grain to animals and eating a higher proportion, using a higher proportion for human consumption. Red meat production would go down, and then production of fish, lentils, peas, soy, and nuts would go up. But I would emphasize this is really a global summary, and for each country this would be very different depending on their starting point. And all the way through we recognize that there are major differences from starting points around the world. Then, as a third strategy, we need to sustainably intensify food production to increase yields in many parts of the world where yields are low. And the low yields especially are seen in places like Africa, parts of Asia, a few areas in Latin America as well. And to make this happen, we need more sustainability, in fact, less fertilizer use in the northern countries in general, and we need more redistribution of fertilizer use to the low yield countries. And of course, other agricultural strategies to improve yields in those areas, but the biggest one is probably going to be redistribution of fertilizer use. We need strong and coordinated governance of land and oceans. We need to cut losses of food and reduce waste in line with the Sustainable Development Goals. And then, just to quickly summarize here, without the kind of transformation that we're talking about, the world risks failing to meet the Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Agreements. But as Dr. Stordalen mentioned, we do have strong data to support moving down the pathway toward achieving these goals. To get there, we need widespread multi-sector, multi-level action, including substantial dietary shift toward healthy patterns and large reductions in waste. The good news is, here on this slide, that these dietary changes from current diets have the capacity to prevent millions of premature deaths per year and basically lead to much healthier populations around the world. And finally, we do see that feeding 10 billion people a year a healthy diet can stay within planetary boundaries. It really is possible, and we can have the opportunity of passing on to our children a healthy planet. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Willett. So that was the global picture. And we're now going to turn to the national level. And it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Juan Rivera, who is Director General of the National Institute of Public Health in Mexico. He is also on the EAT-Lancet Commission. and we are incredibly humbled to have him reflect on what this report implies for Mexico, a country known for its amazing food, but also, like so many other countries, a country in need of urgent food system transformation. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me to be here. For me, it's really a privilege to participate in this global landmark event at the UN headquarters for the presentation of our report. Can I have the presentation? Thank you. So, as mentioned in the report, and Walter did a very good job in explaining the report, food is the single strongest lever to optimize human health and environmental sustainability on Earth. However, our food system is currently threatening both people and the planet, and the Mexican food system is not the exception. I will focus on discussing today how can the Mexican population achieve a healthy and sustainable diet. I will not talk about agricultural policies, how to improve our technology for the production of food. I will not talk either about policies to reduce waste due to lack of time. This is very timely for Mexico because we have a new government, and I think that some of the policies that are proposed here could be implemented very shortly. Despite the reduction of stunting growth in Mexican children under 5 years of age in the last 3 decades, the coexistence of a burden of 10% of stunting and close to 6% of overweight in young children threatens the health and the human capital formation of our children. The growing epidemic of overweight and obesity in all age groups in Mexico in only 3 decades, can you believe that? Only 3 decades, is responsible for the high prevalences of non-communicable chronic diseases and premature deaths of the adult population in Mexico. The prevalence of diabetes in adults in Mexico is about 14%, hypertension 32%, and abnormalities in the lipid profile 41%. Unhealthy diets threatens the health of our people, and the food production endangers the climate stability, the ecosystem's resilience globally. Therefore, we should shift from our current diet to a healthy diet, such as the healthy reference diet proposed by the Commission. I would like to point out that I am not going to be referring now to the diet of children under 2 years of age. This reference diet refers to the diet of adults, school-age children, but not children under 2 years, given their unique nutrient requirements. The blue columns show the average intakes per day for the different food groups proposed by the Commission that Walter presented before, and are expressed in grams per day. The diet would optimize human health and ensure a stable Earth system. The orange columns show the average daily intakes of the overall Mexican population based on our latest National Nutrition Survey. Mexicans are consuming about half the recommended amounts of vegetables, fruits, and legumes, nuts, and the seed groups, about 20% less whole grains, and twice or more the amount of added sugars and red and processed meats. The gray columns show that urban areas resemble the national situation: low intakes of plant-based foods, high intake of red and processed meat and added sugars, and slightly more milk and dairy than recommended. Relative to recommendations, rural population, the yellow columns, and indigenous population, the green columns, are also consuming about half the intakes of vegetables and fruits. but are consuming almost the amounts recommended for vegetable protein sources, that is legumes, nuts, and seeds. They are also consuming higher amounts than recommended of added sugars and red and processed meat, although not as much as urban population. Moreover, relative to the healthy reference diet, our indigenous populations are consuming about the amount of red meat allowed in the reference healthy diet. In contrast to urban areas, rural and particularly indigenous populations are consuming less milk and dairy than the healthy reference diet. Some important facts for the design of policies to achieve the targets. Well, first of all, processed meat accounts for about 1/5 of the total intake of red meat. Given the negative effects of processed meat on health, we should really target this as a problem in Mexico and try to reduce its intake. There is very little intake of nuts and seeds, and most of the intake in this food group comes from legumes. Now, sugar-sweetened beverages in Mexico account for 2/3 of the total added sugars, and therefore we should discourage their consumption. Consumption of refined grains that are not recommended by the healthy reference diet is high and should be discouraged. Therefore, to achieve these targets, Mexico should modify some policies already achieve these goals, we need to change our diets. We need substantial increases of vegetable, fruits, legumes, nuts, or seeds, doubling vegetables and fruits in the overall population, doubling legumes and nuts and seeds in the urban population, increasing 40% of whole grains. For the intake of milk and dairy, we have mixed recommendations, increasing milk and dairy by 40% in indigenous population, while reducing this food by about 10% in urban population. Another change required is substantial reduction in added sugars, refined grains, and processed red meat. Reducing to have added sugars in the overall population, substantial reduction in processed meat in the overall population, and substantial reduction in red meat, except in the indigenous population. To achieve these targets, Mexico should modify some policies already in place aimed at improving the food system and the food environment, and implement new policies. Current policies that need modifications are indicated with an asterisk. To increase the intake of plant-based foods, the Mexican government should shift current agricultural subsidies to favor these foods, increase availability of these foods in underserved rural areas, implement healthy food procurement policies for the public sector, increase the supply of healthy foods in school feeding programs, promote regional short food supply chains in food production. To support higher intake of milk and dairy in rural and indigenous populations, we recommend to target the subsidized milk distribution program, a current federal program, to rural and indigenous communities and households. To discourage the intake of added sugars, refined grains, and processed and red meat, we propose to double the rate of taxes to sugar-sweet beverages and junk food, use tax revenues to ensure drinking water in underserved communities, implement warning front pack labeling and marketing restrictions to children, improve the implementation of current food standards for schools, and set limits to unhealthy ingredients in processed foods. In conclusion, the Mexican food system is threatening the health of our population. We are facing an obesity epidemic, while undernutrition has not yet been eliminated. A radical transformation of the Mexican food system is urgently needed. Relative to the healthy reference diet, the Mexican diet is low in plant-sourced foods, high in added sugars, refined grains, and processed and red meats. A set of multi-sector and multi-level policies to change our food system and our food environment is recommended to achieve a healthy and sustainable diet. Thank you very much.
Wow, the ink is hardly dry on the EAT-Lancet Commission's report, but there's already a country ready to move on a number of very interesting policy paths, it seems. We're now delighted to introduce our next speaker. We're delighted to co-host this event with UN Environment and the permanent mission of Norway to the UN. It is now my pleasure to invite them to make some short reflections. Our first speaker is Satya Tripathi, Assistant Secretary General and Head of the New York Office of UN Environment, the global custodian and certifier of environmental science. Satya Tripathi, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I have about 5 minutes. So a lot to say in 5 minutes, but I'll try. A lot to say because I come from a country, irrespective of the role I fulfill now, I come from India, which is the land of Ayurveda, which basically tells you you are what you eat. And when you forget that, and it's not about food, it's about process, it's about what it results in. So that's what the age-old wisdom scientifically articulated in a very powerful manner by the EAT-Lancet Commission Report, pinning down the science, the numbers, the analytics that tell you incontrovertibly what you need to do to be healthy, not just as an individual, not as a community, not as a nation. We just heard the story of Mexico. This is what drives countries to bankruptcy. And the story is not very different in my country or in our host country, the US, where obesity is the worst epidemic that humankind faces on a planetary scale. But therein also lies the solution. And I'm so delighted that the most profound recommendation is that we need to move to plant-based diets. Now, the hidden story there is that if you are doubling your plant-based diet, you are basically doubling the green cover on the planet, which is the CO2 story. Because when you talk about mitigation, and that's what we've been doing, and Gunhild mentioned about the Brundtland Commission report, we've been talking for almost 50 years in a futile manner about whose responsibility is it to fix the problems on the planet. We've been talking about mitigation. Mitigation is not what is going to get us the solutions. It's adaptation. And in that, I want to draw the Secretary General's very, very concise views on the matter. He focuses, every time we speak, or he's speaking in a public gathering, he talks about mitigation, adaptation, innovation, and finance. That's what is going to raise the ambition. And so in mitigation, we have seen the Commission's report really brings out very substantive possibilities that we can focus on to drive change. In terms of adaptation, I want to share a small story that I shared with Gunhild in September when we met. I have been part of a partnership, building a partnership in India, which the state of Andhra Pradesh, and I talk about adaptation because they are transforming that state by driving down the chemical use to zero, agrochemicals. They have 8 million hectares of cropland, 6 million farmers, all smallholders. They currently converted 525,000 farmers to zero chemical farming. And they intend to get to 6 million farmers by 2021. And why is it such a big story? Because it's the farmer who's producing, it's the farmer who's poor, it's the farmer whose family can actually afford healthy food for a change. The organic food that we buy, it's been a 20-year revolution in the making. We haven't even converted 1% of our cropland to organic. It's a difficult process, and it is expensive. There are only very few people that can afford it. So when the poor and the vulnerable and the underprivileged can actually take their fate into their own hands and change nature, respect nature as it ought to be, then I think we can truly transform the planet. And in that, the EAT-Lancet Commission's report sets a profound benchmark for all of us to follow, to learn from, and not just in an academic way, but to use that in our everyday lives in changing lives, livelihoods, landscapes, people, prosperity, and planet. Thank you.
Thank you, Satya. It's now my great pleasure to introduce Her Excellency Mona Juul, Ambassador and Permanent Representative of Norway to the United Nations. And thank you, Mona, and your entire team and in your mission for all the help in organizing this wonderful event. The government of Norway is also a close ally of EAT, and we are thankful to you and your colleagues, both in Oslo and around the world, for highlighting the importance of the issues we're discussing here today. We look forward to hearing your thoughts.
Thank you, Olav, and good afternoon to all of you. Great to see so many here tonight. I would start by really congratulating the EAT Foundation and to the research team led by John Rockström and Walter Willett. Thank also to the UN Environment Programme for hosting this event together with us. The work undertaken by the EAT-Lancet Commission over the past 3 years is truly groundbreaking. It is a valuable contribution to the fact-based approach and a necessary global discussion on how food, health, climate is connected. Good political decisions must be made on the basis of the most up-to-date and accessible science. However, we must continuously be ready to adjust a policy in line with the changes taking place in the world today. In order to achieve the goals of the 2 global frameworks, that is the Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Agreement on Climate Change, we need a change of pace. The SDGs are indivisible. The individual goals are deeply interlinked. They are universal and commit all member states, of course, including my government. In essence, to reach the universally adopted Sustainable Development Goals in 2030, we have to act fast and we have to act now. The target of limiting global warming, reduce emissions and support climate adaptations as set out in the Paris Agreement are supported by an overwhelmingly majority of the UN member states. There are clear linkages between food production and consumption, health, climate, and environmental impact. Food is a core aspect of our existence and welfare, and our opportunities and future. However, as the EAT-Lancet report also shows, food can have a number of negative consequences on our health, climate, and environment. I think we all are concerned by the obesity epidemics in the Western world, of the emissions of food production, and on the loss of biodiversity and deforestation due to agriculture. The EAT-Lancet reports bring together knowledge, establishes scientific goals, and provide new dimensions that both politicians and society must consider. It will create debate, which it has, also in my country. But such exchange of views is essential in any democracies. The global launch of the report in Oslo on 17th of January did not go unnoticed. And it is important to allow room for alternative viewpoints. The Norwegian government is following these discussions with great interest. In Norway, we are reading the report carefully. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs is currently developing an action plan for sustainable food systems in Norway's foreign affairs and development policies. We are using a food system approach to establish our future engagement in food and agriculture. The action plan will be launched this spring. Norway wants to help raise knowledge, even though, and perhaps especially when, this knowledge challenges us. We are therefore partnering with EAT to provide assistance to launch the report in several countries. The EAT-Lancet Commission's work will not go unnoticed neither here nor elsewhere. The future will show the power of the message in our homes, in our society, in our policies, and not least for our planet. Thank you so much.
You know the saying, you are what you eat. But the way we currently eat is in fact ruining our health, the health of others, and that of the planet. Unhealthy food is now deadlier than alcohol, drug, and tobacco use combined. 2.1 billion people are overweight, yet we eat more sugar, fat, and red meat than ever. Still, 821 million go to bed hungry every night. On top of that, our food is the main cause behind species extinction and a third of all global greenhouse gas emissions. So, can we feed a growing population without destroying the planet and ourselves? Science had no clear answer to this question. That's why EAT gathered 37 of the world's best scientists to determine what a healthy and sustainable diet is and how to get there. The result is the EAT-Lancet Commission, a scientific blueprint for a healthy and sustainable future. If we change the way we produce, consume, transport, and waste food, we can feed everyone a healthy diet while improving the health of our planet. What does this look like? Meat can stay on our plate, but plants need to be the new main course. We should eat a huge variety of fruits and vegetables and a low amount of meat, dairy, and seafood. We should choose unsaturated fats and stay away from refined grains, highly processed foods, and added sugars. And we have no food to waste. It will take huge changes, but following this plan will lower our risk of cancer, strokes, and diabetes. It could help avoid 11 million adult deaths per year. In fact, consuming and producing food more efficiently and mindfully will help to keep our planet flourishing. We have an answer now. We know the right course for a better future. It's on us to actually take that step. Our food can be the key to solving the biggest challenges we face. Food really can fix it.
Transforming the food system will require tangible action from everyone, not only on the political level, but also at home, in business, in our restaurants, and on our farms. And all of us in this room here today, as well as everyone following this session online. In our next session, we have invited representatives with different backgrounds and from different parts of the world to reflect on what this means for them. And at this time, I would like to welcome to the podium Sarah Menker, Alejandra Schroeder, Hilaria Baldwin, Anoka Abiratne, and to moderate this conversation, please give a special welcome to distinguished UN diplomat curator of the Food Systems Dialogues, and not least, winner of the World Food Prize in 2018, Dr. David Nabarro.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hello, and we've just all been introduced, but we will introduce ourselves again in a minute. This is a special moment because during the next 25 minutes, we're going to share with you what this extraordinary report, the EAT-Lancet report, means to us, and how in our work and in our lives we can help bring the findings of the scientists that are so important for the future of the people and the planet, bring them to life and help them to become the reality that promises so much for the future of our world. And so the names have all been given, but I'm actually going to invite each of the panelists to introduce themselves as they would like to be known by you, and to talk a little bit for a minute or two initially, and I'll prompt them perhaps from time to time about what the report means to them. I'm going to start actually by going straight to Alejandra Schrader. Alejandra, you're here. You come from Venezuela, but you moved to in the United States, and you've been at the University of Michigan. You were an urban planner initially.
Yes.
And then you went into MasterChef.
Yes.
And what happened after that?
I had an opportunity to have a new career in the culinary world as a chef, and I carried what my passion was in my former field of land development, which was sustainability. And I'm very lucky to have a second career as a chef, and I feel very fortunate to have the opportunity to use my platform to advocate for the report and for issues of, that will help climate change and improve the health of people, should we switch to a planetary health diet. I think as a chef, I have, like many others, a great opportunity to connect like the farm to the fork, as we are able to educate others about sustainable produce, about biodiversity, and about the importance of supporting small farmers.
And just to push you a bit, do your clients, I know you do a lot of catering work and so on, do they like the kind of ideas you're presenting them?
You know what the best part is? To hear them acknowledge that they, I didn't think I liked X ingredient, especially if it's a plant-based ingredient that I'm trying to serve them, and to recognize that, but I loved it. How do you make it? I want to make it at home. So, I mean, at the end, it can translate into a great change, because if we empower home cooks to start cooking with these ingredients, with local and seasonal ingredients, then it triggers so much change, right? Because now these people are going to be heading to the farmer's market to acquire the seasonal produce that will help the small farmers, right, to thrive. And so it just generates so much greatness in the food system.
So cool. This dietary transformation requires us all to tell everybody about it. And the hashtag, by the way, and everybody here uses social media, is, as you can see, sprayed all around the room. It's EAT-Lancet with that funny sign. I think they call it GATE in advance. I'm very old-fashioned. And really do get tweeting. Do tell everybody about it. And the other thing, just to go on with one more question to you, Alejandra, is that you're a member of the Chef's Manifesto. Tell us a little bit about what that amazing network has become.
Yes, I'm a proud founding member of the Chef's Manifesto, and I can't believe that less than 2 years ago, it was only 16 of us getting together in New York City to start talking about what this could transform into. And today we're 284 chefs from 52 countries, 113 cities.
Wow.
And we are, so the Chef Manifesto is that thematic framework that just lines up very simple actions that all chefs can take to help achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. And not just for chefs, because we are able to educate then also home cooks, right, to practice these. And so we have 8 very simple thematic areas. Most of them align exactly with the report as far as like eating more plant-based food, reducing our intake of red meats, supporting local and seasonal, using local and seasonal produce, etc.
That's so cool. Thank you very much indeed, Alejandra. Yeah, keep the clapping going. And by the way, if you all want to holler or shout or anything like that, you're so welcome to do so. The great thing about this building is that it really does respond to people's making noise. I've heard it here often in my life. Hilaria, you're actually half Spanish and half American, and you are a wellness expert, and you focus on health, and you've done a lot of teaching of yoga. I'm interested to know how you, as an expert in human health and wellness, and at the same time as a mother, how you see the work that's talked about in this report and what it means for you.
I don't have to press anything.
It's on.
It's on.
When it's ready, it's on.
Hi, everybody.
Yeah.
So I do a lot of leading by example, which I use my social media platform. I use Instagram a lot to show what goes on in my home. I have 4 little kids, 5, 3, 2, and 8 months old, so we're really tired. But we eat really well. And, it is my job as their mother, it is our job as their parents to feed them well so that they're healthy, also so that they're very well behaved. And I think that most people who have children will notice if you feed your children not well, they don't behave very well, and it's more work. Also, I believe that I'm creating a tradition for them. A lot of the talk today is about changing adults' behavior. And this is very important, obviously, but it's also important to make it the norm for our children. And so in our home, we talk about eating whole grains. We talk about eating a lot of vegetables. We don't eat meat in our home. We don't eat dairy in our home. And then I use my social media to show what I do to make it possible for other people to do the same. A lot of these topics can seem daunting to people and say, well, this is what I eat. I've eaten this way. My mother ate this way. My grandmother ate this way. How do I make that change? And showing easy fixes that are affordable is kind of my mission. I wrote a book called The Living Clearly Method that is plant-based recipe book for about a third of it.
What happens when your children ask you whether they can have things that are not quite on the list?
So they do ask this, and they can have dessert every night. I mean, this is not like they're having kale chips for dinner. No. They do get to enjoy things, but we have a rule where we eat a certain way at home, and then when they go to birthday parties, they can have the ice cream, they can have the pizza, they can experiment and experience other things. And then they notice that their belly hurts or that they're cranky, and they'll say to me, Mommy, I think it's because I ate the pizza with the cheese on it and my body isn't used to that. So we have a good dialogue about it, but it's also not forbidden. A lot of people will say, oh, let them be kids, let them enjoy, they can eat anything, they'll burn it off. And that's not really true, because they're growing and they're learning, and these are the most important years for establishing a healthy body. And it's our job as parents to be able to say no when they want to have something that they shouldn't have.
And everybody, we were just on last Friday at the launch of EAT-Lancet in Melbourne in Australia, and there was research presented there by an Australian group that shows very clearly that mood is related to diet.
Yeah, 100%.
And there is a big link between dietary quality and people's behavior. So what you're saying that you've experienced with your children directly is now being borne out by more and more research. So keep a look out over the next few months, some controlled trials that show the links between the kind of diet that's talked about in this report and mood and behavior in children and in adults. It's coming out. So you're finding that in your own life?
100%. I mean, I don't like yelling at my kids. I don't like getting frustrated with them, and I don't like the discipline. It's not fun for any of us. So I think the more that I can prevent that, which includes, good night's sleep and a bunch of other things, but also, a healthy diet. If you're a happy person if you feel good. And if you don't feel good, especially for little kids, and they get confused why they don't feel good, then they act out. And so I'm trying to teach them well.
Just last question to you. You're Spanish as well as American. Mm-hmm. And in a way, some say that the diet that's recommended, the planetary diet, is quite a lot of similarities to what your family might have been eating at home and so on. Is that right? And do you feel a sort of sense of commonality with it?
I think so. I mean, there has to be changes as well. I mean, I became vegetarian when I was 5. And which was very weird back then. And I did it on my own. My family was not a vegetarian. I was not vegetarian. And, when I was 20, I gave up dairy. And so in Spain, you eat a lot of dairy. There is a lot of meat. So I think there is a bit of a shift. But yes, it is much more typical of the diet there than it is, for example, in this country.
That's cool. Thank you very much indeed. Big hand here, please. Brilliant. And so I'm now going to ask Anuka Abiratne to talk a bit. Anuka, I love calling you Primrose, which is your other name, and thank you for being with us. And I'd love you to tell your story about how you've developed into being really a social entrepreneur, encouraging organic farming all over South Asia. How did it start?
So as we were having a chat just before we came here, I survived the tsunami at the age of 14, and it was after that we really got into organic farming to give villagers an opportunity to really just get an alternative income. And organic farming became a way for all the villagers in my village to gain additional income and to also get a good diet. And it was important because at that point of time, not everyone knew about organic farming. I mean, everything used to be organic back then. But as the days progressed and the months progressed, things have become a lot more different, and now we have a lot more pesticides in our food. And we've also seen that in my village that we have a lot of people with cancer and different diseases. And that's really why I've continued becoming a social entrepreneur and trying to get more people around South Asia involved in organic farming.
And sorry, yes, and our conversation before we started was fascinating to me for lots of reasons, but here's the one that really struck me. You tell me that organic food is really valued by people in Sri Lanka and in other countries in South Asia. But you went this afternoon to a market here in Manhattan, and you found something that really surprised you about organic food. What was it?
Yes, so here in New York, I went to a market somewhere close by. I don't want to mention the name, but I found that there was 2 types of food in the market, and one was the organic one, which was a lot more expensive, almost twice the price of normal food, which I suppose is full of pesticide. And I was just watching people there, and I was quite perplexed to see that some people would come in, look at the pricing because it matters to them, and they would purchase the one that is cheaper, possibly because it's easier for them to manage. And that made me really sad.
But in your work in Southeast Asia, is it more costly to produce organic food?
Not necessarily. I mean, traditionally, we've had a lot of methods of producing food through traditional oils that keep the pests away. We also use plants like neem, which keep different types of pests away from our organic food. And we've really experimented with different types of methods of engaging, especially women in our grassroots levels, to come up with new ways of using traditional oils and plants to keep away pests. So it wasn't necessarily expensive, but now because you have pesticides that are cheaper and easier, you just go spray it, and that's all you need to do, and everything dies. It's become a lot more expensive, I would say.
So first of all, you're finding that farmers like to grow organic. People are really keen to buy organic. Well, why on earth isn't the whole of Sri Lanka turning organic overnight? What's stopping it from happening?
Well, I think it's quite the same across the world right now. We have a lot of pesticides coming in from different places across Europe, from across North America. They're coming to our countries as well. I'm sure it's being spread across different countries as well. And sometimes these are really cheap. There are subsidies for the pesticides. There are subsidies that come in. And these are being sort of marketed as the best way, the easiest way, and the most convenient way for farmers. So it's very tough for some farmers to convert back to their traditional or organic methods of farming.
Yeah. And I can imagine that you've been fighting away. You are a very decorated young leader. You've been decorated by Women Deliver and by other groups. What would be your advice to other women leaders like yourself who want to try to promote healthy eating and organic food production?
So while I was watching the presentation from the government of Mexico, I realized that there was a lot of obesity and overweightness in different categories of women. And this is also partially because across countries like South America or South Asia, women sometimes do most of the cooking. And women are also part of the food chain. So it would be really great to see how women could be more educated, women could be made more aware about how a diet plays such a vital and important role in the lives of not just children, but also themselves. And as a Women Deliver young leader, I would really love to see that being sort of expressed through government policies and also across different organizations.
Anuka Primrose, thank you very much indeed. We will see more of you. I can just feel it, and it's fabulous. Thank you. And now to Sarah Menka, founder and CEO of Grow Intelligence, Geek in Chief. What do you do, Sarah, and how is this report relevant to you?
Right. That's the name he gave me. It's not how I refer to myself. So I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Grow Intelligence, and we're a data and analytics company focused on the global foods and agricultural systems and in enhancing the understanding of our global food systems. And so he calls me Geek in Chief because what I obsess about is facts, and what we obsess about as a company is finding and enhancing the way in which people can find what they need faster to enable the food system to be a lot more connected and better educated. So when conversations like this happen, the ability to track, the ability to understand and deconstruct kind of becomes a natural way in which we communicate. So as the presentations were being made, I was busy sending text messages to the team at the office saying, hey, can you send me some charts on Mexico? And, you know, just and it should be that easy and that fast for anybody to start to understand it.
And how do you think this amazing report might change the kind of statistics that you produce?
So I think it's, so what we do as a company is we find any type of information or data that would have been captured that relates to our global agricultural systems. So this can be looking at data that's captured from satellites, looking at imagery to plant, you know, to look at climate health and climate change or environmental health, et cetera, all the way to looking at demographic data to better understand, you know, socioeconomics and demand and how that all interplays, all from the supply side to the demand side. And so I think one of the things we've increasingly come to understand is if you look at and we have built one of the world's largest data platforms that is related to agriculture. And so we have a very deep view into what's out there. And one of the things that's really interesting is in terms of data that we currently capture, there's a lot less captured around quality of food than there is about quantity of food. And some of the challenges we're facing as a company that's building predictive models is when you say, oh, I can predict how much wheat is being produced, and then people ask questions, well, what's the protein content in the wheat? Because that determines whether that should be eaten by animals or by humans. And so I think starting to change the ecosystem of what organizations like the United Nations also collect should start to be work that we look at.
Thank you very much indeed. I'd like to invite all our panelists to just give one final comment to you all, a sort of take-home message from their hearts, which will help to make sure that we all become part of the diet revolution that the EAT-Lancet report is encouraging. So Alejandra, what's your take-home message for everybody tonight?
I think that for me, you know, I like to, like I mentioned to you earlier, like I like to walk the walk and talk the talk. So I myself have become an 80% plant-based pescatarian due to my own health issues. And I think I would like to invite people to be open-minded and to taste more plant-based foods and to try to incorporate them more into their own diets, because I think that, like the report says, and I love that, let's not focus on what's being taken away from our diets. Let's focus on the huge range of plant-based foods and delicious and nutritious foods that we can incorporate into our daily diet. So let's focus on the positive and get excited about tasting new things. And if you need any recipes, just call me, and I can share, no matter where from the world, because that's another thing. We can adapt this diet to regional and culinary traditions.
Oh, cool. Thank you very much indeed. Sarah. First of all, Sarah, I'm super sorry for that comment about geekiness, but it's just...
I'm a proud geek. It's okay.
Sorry? But you did... one thing you said to me was that how important it is that we do focus on the numbers. What's your take-home message for everybody?
I think the biggest thing that I'm leaving with, and I hope everybody leaves with, is that we need to invest a significant amount in education and in translating scientific knowledge into what a consumer can take home. And so taking what's in this commission report and breaking it down and creating real-time ways of tracking it and better understanding our planet on a much more real-time basis is necessary. So education.
That's so cool. Education and understanding real time. Thank you, Sarah, very much indeed. Hilaria, what would be your kind of pocket advice for everybody?
I think the more that all of us, and especially all of you who have all of these amazing facts and charts, the more that we can make this digestible to everyone, I think that we'll actually find change, because it is daunting. I always say to my students and my group on Instagram that change this way to eat healthfully is simple. It might not be easy. It's not easy because we're used to doing it a certain way, and changing that can be hard. But it's actually simple. If I told you what to eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and I put you in a room and I forced you to do that, you would be healthy and you'd be doing well for the environment. But if you had all these options out there, then you might not do it. So does that ring true with you? You're just laughing at me. He's like, yes, put me in a room. So yeah, no, I mean, the more that all of you guys with all these incredible facts can bring it down and make it more simple and understandable to people, I think that we could really make some change.
Thank you very much. That's so cool. Primrose, your advice?
So mine would be to, of course, I agree with the whole fact that you need to make it more digestible and easy for everyone to understand the facts and the data. But also, so many of you have the power to sort of translate what's in the report into things that are tangible on the ground at policy level and back home. So please do try to sort of practice what you preach and to make that happen. So thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Now, when Gunhild Stordalen spoke at the beginning, she referred to the Sustainable Development Agenda. This is this wonderful plan for the future of our world and her people that was eventually produced after 3 years of negotiation in 2015. And I think all of us believe that that cannot be realized without transformation of our food systems. And this work done by EAT-Lancet is really the pathway forward. It's the compass. And the people who've produced it are very courageous. They're going to come under attack, and they will continue to come under attack, but it's important. And that's because the future of people and the planet depend on it. And you've seen from this panel people who are full of love and full of energy and commitment to the future and the well-being of everybody. So with that spirit, we thank them very much indeed for sharing their views, and we encourage all of you to take their example as you move forward. Thanks again. brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah, Anoka, Hilaria, Alejandra, and thank you, David. I think I'm actually in love with all 5 of you. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted now to welcome to the floor our final speaker. He doesn't need much of an introduction. You know him from stage and screen. He's also a passionate advocate for our environment, and for many years he has been working with various UN causes. And we're delighted that he's here with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome actor and activist, Mr. Alec Baldwin.
Thank you. I want to mention that I heard a rumor outside that Dr. Willett injured his leg slipping on a wrapper in front of a McDonald's, which shows that the meat crisis, the crisis of meat production, goes beyond anything we ever imagined. Hello and welcome. Let me just say first what an honor it is to be with you for this important event here at the United Nations. Over the past 5 years, I've been working with the United Nations on a number of global environmental issues, in particular forest protection and climate change. It's been a welcome but sobering education. Here are a couple of the realities that I have come to understand. You all know them well, but I believe that they bear repeating. Human activity is fundamentally altering and harming the planet. We are causing what scientists refer to as the 6th great extinction, erasing countless species forever. We are driving biodiversity loss, unraveling the precious web of life that makes the earth habitable for humans. We are, without much introspection, destroying the planet's forests at an alarming rate. And we are causing global climate change, which, if we do not act, will be our undoing. Scientists have been warning us for decades, not just about each of these challenges, but about how each is connected and ultimately driving the others. To turn things around, we need to find solutions that work for both people and planet. And there are too few approaches that look at the big picture of where these challenges overlap. That, my friends, is what the EAT-Lancet Commission Report is all about: setting targets, connecting the dots, and calling for collaboration. It is a blueprint for a better future based on what we put on our plates every day. It calls for targets that recognize food security and environmental security as mutually achievable goals. One need not be a casualty of the other, because food is at the very center of global environmental challenges. Take the protection of the world's forests, for instance, an issue that I care deeply about. Rainforests in the Amazon, Indonesia, and the Congo Basin contain an almost incomprehensible diversity of life and beauty. They are also among the best solutions we have for climate change, to address climate change. Yet we keep cutting them down at a deeply unsettling and accelerating rate. Let's be clear, the continued destruction of forests means that we will fail to achieve any of our environmental goals on climate, on biodiversity, on water, all of them. What is driving this destruction? One leading cause is extractive industries, fossil fuel exploitation and use, mining and logging. But believe it or not, an even more deadly cause, as you all know, is food. Food is the single largest driver of land conversion and forest loss. Already, humans have seized almost half of all vegetated land area on the planet, and most of that has been used for agriculture. That expansion has been a leading cause of species extinction and biodiversity loss. So one of the most powerful and clearest messages coming from the EAT-Lancet Commission is this: half the earth is enough. Why? First, because it has to be. We need to leave the other half of the world's lands intact for nature itself and to halt this sixth extinction. But second, and this is important because the second is that we don't need more land to feed the world. This new report debunks that common and dangerous misconception. It says that no more conversion, no more expansion, no more deforestation, and no more environmental destruction is needed. I can't tell you how refreshing and reassuring that is for me to hear. So it is not a matter of claiming more land, but making better use of what we already have. It's about shifting agricultural priorities away from producing more food and toward producing higher quality food. It says it is possible to feed a population of 10 billion by 2050 without ruining the environment even more, and at the same time leaving half the planet to nature. That's one of the most encouraging pieces of news I've heard in a while. And it is also becoming clear that we have the solutions, the technologies, and the policy tools to bring about this change. More efficient farming practices on already converted land will get us a lot of the way there. Cutting down on the staggering 30% of food that is wasted or lost in the food system will get us even further. But finally, it is about meat. Reducing meat production drastically will be nothing less than essential to achieve the half-Earth goal. If we base our recipes on plants, a lot of them, and in great variation, we can protect the planet and thus our own health with it. Plants require far less water, energy, and land, and producing them emits a fraction of greenhouse gases. In fact, per gram of protein, producing beef requires 20 times more land than producing beans. If we shift to plant-rich diets, we can help save the planet. That is a message that needs to be shared far and wide. Here are some more staggering facts. 1/3 of the world's cropland is used to grow feed for cows rather than the fruits, nuts, vegetables, and whole grains needed for healthy people. In the US, we are producing more than 5 times, 538% more red meat than is recommended for healthy diets, and underproducing fruits, nuts, and vegetables by 20 to 80%. It would be truly devastating. It would be truly devastating for the world if other countries were to follow the American diet. That is why I am grateful for the alternative provided by the EAT-Lancet Commission's planetary health diet. My wife, Ilaria, and other panelists spoke today about how important it is to introduce our children early to healthy, sustainable diets and to have them understand that the food choices they make have an impact. They will have to live with the consequences of what we eat today. If you still wonder how much food matters, consider this. More than half of the world's population suffers from some form of malnutrition. 2 billion people have insufficient access to nutrients, while another 2 billion suffer from diseases related to overconsumption and obesity. Diet-related diseases, including diabetes, cancer, and heart diseases, are now among the leading causes of global deaths, more than tobacco and drugs combined. On the other hand, shifting from unhealthy diets to the EAT-Lancet planetary health diet can prevent 11 million premature adult deaths per year. It can also drive the transition toward a sustainable global food system by 2050 that ensures healthy food for all within planetary boundaries. So the message of the EAT-Lancet report is that eating selfishly for your own health also protects the environment. Save ourselves, and in the process, save the planet. So the bottom line is this: half the earth is enough. We can feed the world with the land we already have. While our current food systems are causing great harm to the planet as well as our health, it does not have to remain that way. There is a better path, and it starts with our diets. We can no longer throw up our hands in resignation and say that global environmental challenges are beyond our control, that we are only one person, that our individual decisions can't have a significant cumulative impact. The choices we make will make a huge difference. greatest challenge we face is influencing human behavior. You cannot outlaw the consumption of meat and any other products that most dramatically impact sustainability in agriculture. We can only teach, we can only shine a light. And regarding that, I would like to thank Norway. I would like to thank the country of Norway for your powerful example in shining that light, your steadfast commitment to help us understand the true impact of our dietary choices. Now let's share this EAT-Lancet Commission report with everyone we know and take that important message out into the world. I would also like to thank Dr. Surdalen, Ambassador Mona Ewell, Dr. Walter Willett, Dr. Satya Tripathi, and Dr. Juan Rivera for all of your presentations today. Our future and our children's future depend on your good work, and thank you.
Thank you, Alec. And with that, the program has come to an end. And thank you to everyone in this room and to all of you who followed this online. Let the great food transformation begin.